With all that, Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
Oh, yeah, baby. I can't believe we haven't started rapid fire yet.
I know. We've been going for a while, but we had a lot to talk about tonight. Fill in the blank. It's Blake that Drayk Bowen will not play baseball for the Irish this season and will instead focus solely on playing linebacker.
It's surprising to me, to be honest with you, because coming out of high school, he was a highly touted football and baseball guy, and I know that it was a point that he wanted to go somewhere where he could do both, right? Like that was not a deal breaker, but it was part of the deal at the end of the day. And so it's surprising to me that he's already kind of giving up on baseball. But after seeing his reaction on the field after the championship game, his post game comments, it's not overly surprising at the end of the day because I think he's all in and all focused on football. And I think the sour taste and the disappointment of where the season ended and them coming up short is resonating with him. And I think he wants to be a leader on this team. And if you want to be a leader and you want to be a guy who's truly committed to winning a championship, you got to make some sacrifices.
It's true.
And you got to be fully committed. Like I've done both. And again, it's nowhere near the level of doing both at Notre Dame. But baseball is still a time commitment. And when baseball season comes, they're going to take top priority. Like he's going to have to miss some of these things, or he would have to miss some of the stuff coming up in the spring with football. And so to me, it shows that he's fully committed to football. And I think he truly wants to be a leader and a guy that leads them to a national championship.
Completely agree with everything that you said. And like you said, like he was one of the guys who was still out there with that glazed, dazed look on his face afterwards, sitting on the bench, watching Ohio State celebrate out there on the field. And I do think that, it's been a big motivator for him. And I agree with what Joe Allen is saying as well. He's realizing where his future is, because between the two, he's got a chance to go out and be an NFL linebacker here within a year or two. He had 3 at-bats last year for the baseball team. I think he pinch ran early in the season and he made an early highlight, and everyone's like, Drayk Bowen, great baseball player. He's tearing it up. He had 3 at-bats for the baseball team last year. And, the football team was willing to make, like they let him go over there and play baseball and practice with baseball and balance those things in the spring. And, like when it comes to fall training camp, it's not an issue, but it just feels like, for one, he was recruited by a different, like there was a different baseball staff in place. Before Sean Stifler, Link Jarrett was here when Drayk Bowen was still in high school. And it's not like he's giving up like being a full-time outfielder for the Notre Dame baseball team. He got 3 at-bats last year, and I think ultimately his future is with football, and he is going to go full force and give his full attention to football. So while it stinks maybe for him that he's not able to do both anymore, I think he fully realizes where his future is, and that is as a football player, as a linebacker. Fill in the blank. ESPN has a bracket projection for next year's college football playoff field. They have number 7 Notre Dame hosting number 10, wait for it, LSU. And it would be blank if that happens.
It would be I don't even know what the word would be, but I think it would be a bittersweet homecoming for Brian Kelly, because I think that Notre Dame
would be more bitter, much more bitter than sweet.
Because I think Notre Dame as a football program is ahead of where LSU should be as a football program right now. And good luck to any team that's coming into South Bend for a playoff game and expecting to win that game. So, I think it would be, like I said, it would be bittersweet. And I think for the fans, it would be even more of like that final kind of, what's the word?
Get a little closure out of it.
Closure. That's exactly the word I was looking for. It would be closure for both sides of the party. I think it'd be closure for Brian Kelly finally. And I think it'd be closure for Notre Dame fans to finally, potentially watch Brian Kelly stumble and crumble one last time where it all started.
I mean, if you thought that there was a great atmosphere for Notre Dame, Indiana last month, just think about what the atmosphere for a night game at Notre Dame Stadium would be when you've got Notre Dame, LSU, Brian Kelly coming back to Notre Dame. I am completely here for it. Like if you would have asked me this, like this past season before Notre Dame ever hosted a playoff game and before Notre Dame was ever in the playoff, it would have been like, I don't know if I would want that. But where the programs are right now and with everything that we have seen, I think I am fully ready for it because I wasn't that thrilled about the prospect of Notre Dame in Indiana. I am full-fledged, full in on the prospects of Notre Dame LSU at Notre Dame Stadium. I think that would be awesome. I think that would be one of the best environments that maybe we have ever seen at Notre Dame Stadium if that happened. All the Fighting Irish fans at full throat, chance to boo Brian Kelly every chance they get. I'm ready for that. I'm fully ready for it. Answering Joe's question, yes, Drayk Bowen was primarily a pinch runner for the baseball team last season. I guess technically still last year. So, Jess, ESPN recently did a list of the top 100 college football players from the 2024 season. 5 Notre Dame players were on the list. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you the ranking, and you see if you can guess who the players are. Now, I hope you haven't cheated. I hope you haven't looked at the list. And for anyone in the chat, if you've looked at the list, don't answer. Jesse, resist looking at the chat, maybe. So I'm going to give you the ranking. You see if you can tell me who the player is, okay?
Yeah, let's start low and work to high.
So when you say low, you're talking about like
the best.
You want to start with the best and work the other way. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. So here are the different rankings: 13, 27, 62, 68, 76. That's like a combination. Who was the number 13 player on ESPN's list of the top 100 players this season?
Benjamin Morrison.
No. Benjamin Morrison, not on the list. These were players who played, I'll just give you this hint. There were players who played a vast majority of the season. So we're not talking about like NFL draft or anything like that.
Number 13. Oh. Okay. I think I read this. I'm on the same page as you now. Number 13 would have to be Jeremiah Love.
Incorrect. He is on the list, but 13 is not Jeremiah Love. There was one player that ESPN thought was better.
Xavier Watts.
Xavier Watts. Ding, 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 ding. Number 13. That's exactly right. Xavier Watts came in the highest rated player on Notre Dame's list at number 13. So you pounded that out fairly quickly. And I'm not, like if Benjamin Morrison had been healthy, I'm fully confident that he would have been on this list as well. I will say this. There are 2 players who made this list who are a little bit surprising to me. And one player who didn't make the list who is also a little bit surprising to me. So Watts is number 13. Who is number 27 on ESPN's list?
That's got to be Jeremiah Love.
That is Jeremiah Love. Very well done. Cam Scattaboo, by the way, the running back for Arizona State. You want to guess how high they had him? I'll give you this hint. He was in the top 10.
7th.
Number 4. Cam Scattaboo, number 4.
Just not. I'm not buying.
Wholeheartedly disagree with that. I'm sorry.
He plays in the Big 12.
Yes.
His game is predominantly about running over and running through guys. And he the thing is he always gets caught. He doesn't have breakaway speed. And I got news for you. Everyone in the NFL is physical and can tackle. So I don't see him just being a pinball in the NFL like he was in the Big 12. But
Yeah.
I
Cam
digress.
Scadaboo, nice little story, all that kind of stuff. I'm sorry. Jeremiah Love, head and shoulders better than Cam Scadaboo. They're not even
so much more talent.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so Watts is 13. Jeremiah Love is number 27. The next player, the next Notre Dame player on this list, we've got 3 players remaining. Number 62. Who do you think was ranked number 62 in ESPN's list of the top 100 college football players this season?
So I got to start kind of doing process of elimination. I don't think anyone amongst the offensive line is going to qualify. We already took care of the running backs.
Correct.
I don't think that a wide receiver is going to make this list because of what we talked about earlier in the show.
I'll give you another
naturally,
hint.
I'm going to the defensive side of the ball.
Okay. Good assumption.
And I got to go with a guy who had a lot of sacks. He's projected to get drafted this season. So we already got Xavier Watts off the list. It's got to be Riley Mills.
It is Riley Mills. Very well done. Riley Mills at number 62. And I'm going to say, this is no disrespect to Riley Mills at all, but I was a little bit surprised that
he's getting a lot of love recently.
That he was as high as he was on this list. I said that I felt like the Ohio State game would be the game that Notre Dame missed Riley Mills the most, and I think it panned out that way. So I don't know if maybe they looked at this and kind of took that into consideration. But when you look at where Notre Dame's pass rush was with Riley Mills and without Riley Mills, I think I think that maybe that went a long way. And Riley Mills comes in at number 62 on this list, and I hope that he ends up being healthy enough that he's I don't know if he'll be ready to go when training camps start next year, but hopefully he's close and he's fighting his way for a roster spot, because it like the timing of it to get injured in December, that is not a good time when it, like when it comes to draft and all that kind of, he's got good film, but I hope that things work out for Riley Mills. So we have 2 players left for Notre Dame in ESPN's top 100, 68 and 76. Who do you think is number 68?
So I think for 68, you got to stay on the defensive side of the ball. I thought that these 2 guys played hand in hand together, and I think that they're kind of very similar. I think this guy, he also created sacks and is probably going to get drafted. So I could see Howard Cross being at 68 and being, because I think him and Mills are not essentially the same player, but similar production, similar, I think, going to have NFL grades. So that would be my guess, is Cross.
Unfortunately, it's not Howard Cross. I get your rationale and your reasoning, but it was not Howard Cross at number 68. It is a defensive player, though.
Leonard Moore?
Not Leonard Moore. Leonard Moore was not on this list, which is pretty surprising to me when you look at how good the secondary was and how
well, he was rated. I told you earlier he was rated higher than Travis Hunter in coverage. So
right.
I mean, if it's not, there's no defensive end. You told me it's on the defensive side of the ball. We got the 2 tackles. If it's not Moore and it's not Watts, there's really no one else in the secondary. So you got to start looking at linebackers. I think that Bowen and Osbury and Snead are more talented, but Kaiser was on the field a lot. He was still the leader of the defense, the captain. I think he's very similar. I'm drawing a blank to he's very similar to JD Bertrand. I think he's going to get drafted by someone. So I guess by process of elimination, you'd have to go with Kaiser.
It is Jack Kaiser. Very well done. Working that out. Jack Kaiser comes in at number 68 on ESPN's list of top 100 players from the season. And
I think he's literally going to follow like the same draft projection as Bertrand.
I feel like this is the most surprising to me. And again, it's not a shot at Jack Kaiser, but like you don't typically see Notre Dame guys, kind of getting this kind of appreciation on these lists. And yep, Schuler was not on the list. Jack Kaiser came in at number 68. And I think that, kind of what you're saying, I think that this potentially bodes pretty well, potentially, for Jack Kaiser's short-term future. Well, he's still probably going to be a later round
He's at
day
the
3
Senior Bowl
NFL
too.
pick, but I think that he's got a chance at maybe making a roster. JD Bertrand was starting for the Falcons by the end of this season, by the way.
DK might have just said the most intelligent thing he's ever said. Who's to say Al Golden doesn't draft him?
Very good. Very
Obviously,
good call.
Golden's going to run the same defense.
Yep.
He obviously knows how smart Kaiser is. He knows that he can call a defense. And I feel like the Bengals need linebackers. So I would not be surprised if Al Golden. I'll put it out there now. I bet the Bengals draft at least one Notre Dame defensive player.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. It's now obviously it's going to depend on where their picks come and what's available to them and all that kind of stuff. I would be completely shocked if Kaiser doesn't end up being a guy who Al Golden pushes them to try to draft on day 3. And I
mean, their secondary sucks, so why not get Watts?
Yeah,
too?
Exactly. He would probably be trying to gobble up Watts. You're exactly right. And, a guy like, because they need help across that defense. And Riley Mills, if he doesn't get drafted, is he's the kind of guy that, because of the history that Al Golden has with him, you could see that, him getting picked there as well. Okay, so we have one more player on this list for Notre Dame. Number 76 is the final ranking of the Notre Dame player on this list. Who do you think that is?
I want it. So you still got to look at, overall production, where Notre Dame ended up. And even though the passing numbers weren't sexy, I feel like Riley Leonard still put together a lot of total touchdowns, didn't turn the ball over very much. And again, he was a national champion. He led an offense to a national championship. I still think his game projects well in the NFL. I think he's either going to get drafted by Buffalo, Philadelphia, or Baltimore.
I agree.
And we've talked about it before where this is a guy who only got 4 years in college, and some of his years were very limited. I mean, he had to play as a true freshman. He had injuries in other years. So he didn't even get full seasons on top of only getting 4 seasons, right? And you look in comparison to Michael Penix, Bo Nix, guys who are, 7 years in college, 8 years in college. Who's to say Riley Leonard doesn't get picked up? I think he gets drafted in like the 5th or 6th round by one of those teams I just mentioned. And they just let him sit as a backup, maybe even a practice squad quarterback for 2 or 3 years and truly see if he can develop. So, for that reason of the raw potential, being nowhere close to a ceiling and still taking a team to a national championship, I got to go Riley Leonard.
You had me at passing numbers aren't sexy. Yes, Riley Leonard is the number 76 player on ESPN's list of top 100. I mean, he ultimately was a quarterback playing in a national championship game, and I think that it took, maybe some people a little bit longer to figure out what makes Riley Leonard tick and how this whole thing works. Could the passing have looked better? Yeah, we talked about that earlier in the show, but Riley Leonard ends up being ESPN's number 76 player in their list.
I mean, at the end of it, he's still a competitor, and that goes a long way. Like, guys who want to win and will do anything to win goes a long way with being on an NFL team.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The intangible stuff was there. And I mean, there were like Riley Leonard was just dripping with intangibles at the end of the day. I'm more than a little bit surprised though. They have Curtis Rourke at number 25, the Indiana quarterback on this list. Tyler Warren is number 6. Travis Hunter is their number 1. Ashton Jeanty, number 2. Cam Ward, number 3. Cam Scadaboo, number 4, and Jeremiah Smith at number 5 on their list. So
Yeah, anyone who thinks Jeremiah Smith is not better than Cam Scatterbu is delusional.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Notre Dame's 2025 schedule is complete after the ACC announced the Irish are going to visit Stanford. Finally became official. Notre Dame Stanford is going to continue. They'll close the regular season next November. Stanford's going to be one of 6 ACC teams the Irish play next fall. Are you good with that, Jess?
I'm fine with that. It's just good old Stanford. I mean, it's a Power Four team. It is what it is. I mean, Notre Dame obviously stands on traditions and rivalries and that sort of thing. And putting it at the end of the season, they can get out to I know that the window has changed now, but it feels very much like just USC, Stanford are always going to kind of be at the end of the season. They're always going to make that last trip out to California. So, I mean, I've got nothing against it. It could be worse. It could be a MAC team. It could be a Division I AA team. It's still a Power Four team and a school that you have a lot of tradition with. So, again, is it sexy right now to play Stanford? No, but you can't control what other programs are doing. You can just only put teams on the schedule.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, they're going to play 6 ACC teams, and that it fluctuates a little bit. The average is 5. And like Josh is saying, meh. I mean, they're going to play Miami. They're going to play North Carolina.
Would you rather them play NIU again and potentially be embarrassed?
Yeah, there's not going to be any MAC teams on the schedule. The only group of 5 is going to be Navy. The ACC teams are going to be Miami, North Carolina State, Boston College, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, and Stanford. It's like you've got Texas A&M on the schedule, obviously. Miami is expected to be pretty good. I think that it's a pretty solid schedule, all things considered. And the way the schedule lays out, you've got Miami, you're at Miami week 1. Then you've got a bye in week 2, and then you host Texas A&M. Then it goes Purdue at Arkansas, Boise State, NC State, USC, and then you've got your second bye October 25th. It's going to be pretty standard now where you're going to have 2 bye weeks during the season. And then after the second bye, at BC, Navy, at Pitt, Syracuse, at Stanford. That's pretty manageable at the end. What do you think about how the schedule ends up laying out?
Yeah, I think that the way that the schedule lays out is your toughest portion of the schedule is the first month of the season. You've got Miami, Texas A&M, and Arkansas all in there. I would say it would be pretty tough had they not put the bye in between Miami and Texas A&M. I think that's very crucial when you look at it, because I think having to play at Miami and then at home the next week potentially against Texas A&M. I mean, I think Texas A&M is going to be better than last year, and luckily they get to play them at home. At Miami, I don't know what the turnover is going to look like with Ward leaving, and I'm not truly sold on Carson Beck being, a top, but it's still a good program on the road against a good quarterback potentially. So, you don't know what Arkansas is going to be. They still are in the SEC. They're still going to have great recruits, and you're playing at Arkansas. So I think that also plays a factor. If it were Boise State this year of this season, I would say that first 5 weeks is probably tougher than anyone's in the country, to be honest with you. But I mean, they're lucky that Boise State's going to fall off. I don't know.
I mean, Boise State's still going to be solid, but they won't be nearly as good as this year because you're not going to have, a potential top 10 pick, Ashton Genty, on the roster anymore.
So I'm more worried, I guess, to sum it up with how it lays out. I think the first half of the schedule is more crucial than the second half of the schedule.
Yeah. I don't think anyone's thrilled with having the bye week right away, but the fact of the matter is there's only because these schedules are drawn up so much in advance, there's not a whole lot you can do, and you're going to have 2 byes, is it better than having 2 byes late in the season, which is what they had? I think if you could do this, you would draw it up like you play 4 games, you have a bye, you play 4 more games, you have a bye, but it's not going to be a perfect situation. So No, but you're absolutely right. Like the schedule is front loaded. You get past the front end of that schedule, and you're feeling pretty good about the way things shake out. You get through that second bye. There's only so much you can do. So I'm curious. Do you feel any differently about Ryan Day after he won his first national championship?
No, I would have felt more about him if he lost because I mean we've talked about it. Let's be real about it as well. That was the best roster in college football. You talk at the beginning of the season, who told you should have won the national championship? Ohio State. I would say the only thing is that Ryan Day actually coached through expectations for once, I believe. And yes, he lost to Michigan, and Michigan fans make that a much bigger deal than what it needs to be. The man is a national championship. Who cares about Michigan? Who cares about the rivalry? Who cares about a Big Ten championship? You won the ultimate goal. You won a national championship. Everything is a wash after that. But I mean, let's be 100% real about what their offense was. NFL quarterback, two NFL wide receivers, or sorry, running backs, three NFL wide receivers, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, and Emeka Mbuka,
Yeah.
all going to be drafted. Will Howard going to be drafted. Judkins going to be drafted. Travion Henderson going to be drafted. There's a couple of those offensive linemen who are going to be drafted. You go to the defensive side of the ball, you got one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. You got great defensive ends who are going to get drafted.
I mean,
You got
all
a
these
great
things, all these
safety.
things you're saying are fair, and they did, obviously have to shell out a lot of money to get them to come back. You're absolutely right. But I mean, what's different from any other year, basically? Because they obviously recruit at a high level year in and year out. They always have one of the
Especially
more
a wide
talented.
receiver.
Yeah, they always have one of the more talented rosters in the country. So, like, I think you can make it. There's obviously a case that maybe he should have won one before this. So I don't feel any differently about him. He's finally got it. He's still one of the least likable coaches in the country. Like if you made the least
Well, I
likable
mean,
Mount Rushmore of current coaches, it's like him, James Franklin, Brian Kelly. I don't know who else is on it right now.
the thing about Ryan Day is the man wins a national championship and then immediately starts crying about tampering. It's like, dude,
Right.
you completed your roster by going to the portal last season. Caleb Downs literally said he did not want to leave Alabama, but he did. So it's like, what did you do to pull him out of the hands of Alabama, right? So it's like, I don't know. I have a lot of Ohio State fans, unfortunately, because of where I live, and I didn't realize this, but this roster was a lot of homegrown guys and guys who were older. Right? A lot of seniors were on this team.
Yeah.
It felt like the perfect marriage of their homegrown guys and then completing the puzzle with the guys they got out of the portal between Judkins, Will Howard, Caleb Downs. Like it was the perfect compilation. And so I guess I'm impressed that he actually did it and didn't fall on his face in the playoff. But at the same time, all the cards were stacked up in his favor. Like this was a team that was built to win a national championship.
It's exactly right. I would have felt more different. I think you said it. I would have felt more differently about him if they hadn't won. Like you would still be thinking, like, what? This guy has all this talent.
I think he
Why
should have been
isn't this
fired
guy
if he lost, but that's just me.
really? You think it would have been fireable if they had lost in the national championship game?
He was 0 for 3. He would have lost to Michigan, lost the Big Ten championship, and lost in the national championship
Well, they didn't
with a
get to the Big Ten
roster.
championship game though.
Right. So they failed to win a Big Ten championship. They
Okay.
failed to beat Michigan, and they failed to win a national championship. Those are the three goals of the Ohio State coach, and he did it with what was supposed to be the best roster that he's ever had and the best roster in all of college football. So yeah, I would have felt like he should have. It would have been a long conversation.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with that. Like Tom says, the fact that Ryan Day lost 2 games with his roster. I mean, they did come back and at least beat one of the teams that beat them. It's still like the fact that that roster lost to the roster that Sharon Moore has at Michigan, like that that is just a colossal fail. And like anything but winning a national championship, I agree, probably would have been pretty unacceptable if you're sitting on the
You're
Ohio State.
paying a defensive coordinator the top salary in college football. Like everything was there for Ryan Day. All he
Yeah.
had to do was not mess it up, and he got very close. Because people have said it before, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but in the old playoff, Ohio State doesn't even make the playoff,
Right.
let alone win a national championship.
Give me one early Super Bowl prop bet that you like the most.
The prop bet that I like the most is Travis Kelce over on receptions.
And what's the number?
I don't know the number. Whatever it is, I'm taking the over.
You're just going to take it over, even though they only threw to him Patrick Mahomes only threw to him twice.
Correct.
Against Buffalo.
I think the Eagles' defense is vulnerable to tight ends.
I like
Zach
that.
Ertz had 11 catches in the last game. I think when Patrick Mahomes is playing in his biggest games, he knows who his guy is. He knows who the security blanket is, the guy who he trusts. And I think naturally, Travis Kelce just finds a way to get open, especially in zone coverage.
With the exception of against Buffalo. Buffalo did a good job of taking him away. I thought that late in the game, Mahomes was going to have to start finding him a little bit more because it was still close and they had to go down and score. That didn't necessarily happen that way, but I'll have to see what the over is for Travis Kelce. You're saying no matter what it is, you would pound the over on Kelce, though.
What's yours?
Mine is actually, it's an over-under as well. Mine is Patrick Mahomes' rushing attempt over-under is 6.5. And you get plus 105 odds on that. He's only gone over on this twice this season, but both have been in their 2 playoff games. So I love the over on Patrick Mahomes' 6.5 rushing attempts in the Super Bowl.
I think what also makes that a good bet is Mahomes gets out on the perimeter, and Jalen Carter sucks up everything in the middle. So I think you're going to have to try to get out on the edges. And I mean, Kansas City ran that play action boot to Mahomes like every 3rd and 4th and 1 that they needed him. So
yep,
I see that being there too.
You're just going to keep it in his hands as much as possible and give him the option, let him make plays with his legs. It's there. All right. Saving this for you. Brian Schottenheimer, Dallas Cowboys' new head coach. How do you feel about it after the press conference yesterday?
How do I feel in Brian? Are we solely talking
How do you
about
feel
Brian
about Brian?
Schottenheimer?
How do you feel about Brian Schottenheimer? I don't care about the Jerry Jones circus and like the Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones part of the press conference was a circus. It was idiotic. That was a clown show. How do you feel specifically about Brian Schottenheimer as the head coach? Are you feeling good about it? You feeling bad about it? You feeling uneasy? Obviously, this was not a popular hire. So how do you feel about it?
I personally don't feel bad about it. I think after understanding where he comes from and his dad, Marty Schottenheimer, I feel like there's a sense of we're going to work. Like listening to him talk, he talked about, hard work, getting his opportunity and taking advantage of the opportunity. And I think what he's going to do in Dallas is going to be pretty similar. I think he's going to be more of, defining culture, hard work. I think he's going to be more tough, hard-nosed than previous coaches.
And I think that those are all things that you and I were looking for in whoever the next head coach ended up being.
And the more I listen to him talk about, his time with Pete Carroll and the success that they had running the ball and the success they had coming off of play action, I think that bodes well because I think you need to take pressure off Dak. I think their run game is going to get better. And I think it makes sense, too, when your money is tied up with CD and Dak, let's bring in the guy who knows these guys already, who spent time with these guys already, who isn't going to make them completely change their entire offense or relearn an offense. Like,
yeah,
I respect those things. And then, his decision to bring in Eberflus as a defensive coordinator. I love that as well because Eberflus has head coaching experience. And even though that went wrong, the Bears defenses were good when Eberflus was there, you know? And he has a good track record of being
and
a
the
good
Colts
DC.
defenses were good when he was there with the Colts after he left Dallas as a position.
And so when you can bring in a guy who has head coaching experience to be paired with a first-time head coach, I like that. I like having as many head coaches in the room who aren't officially the head coach. You know what I mean? Because I just think it's going to bode well for them. I think they're going to be tougher on defense. I just think they're going to be tougher overall.
I do too.
Even though it's not sexy, I think of, listening to him talk about getting his opportunity and the hard work and him not knowing whether he was going to get the opportunity. It goes back to kind of what Marcus Freeman says is trust beyond knowing. Like he trusted that he would eventually get his opportunity. And even when he didn't think it was going to be there, he got his opportunity, no matter how back end it was or, how he got there. The fact is he stayed the course and got his opportunity. And I think that's what he needs to kind of instill into this team is it's not always going to go our way, but we need to continue to fight and work hard. And I just think you're going to see a more disciplined team overall.
I think so as well. And, look, I became resigned a long time ago to the fact that Jerry Jones is only going to hire a certain kind of head coach. It's going to be either coaches who don't have a lot of other options. But the criteria has basically been you're either a former head coach who's done something, Bill Parcells and Mike McCarthy fit that bill, or you're a coordinator who has a previous connection, first time head coach, previous connection to Jerry Jones. And that's obviously what Schottenheimer is. And the more you listen to what he has to say and what he brings to the table, I think it's actually a pretty good fit. Look, Brandon, you're a 49ers fan. Like, I get it. Like, you can sit here and mock it. Everyone's mocking it, but he's turned down head coaching opportunities before with Buffalo and Miami. And I think that that's part of what's taken him so long to get to where he is right now. Look, this guy was the offensive coordinator with the Jets when Mark Sanchez was the quarterback and they went to the AFC Championship game. Think about that for a minute. Mark Sanchez was the quarterback for the New York Jets in 2 AFC Championship games, and Brian Schottenheimer was, the coordinator of that team. There are a lot of similarities to Marcus Freeman when you look at Brian Schottenheimer, though. He's a culture guy. He's a relationship guy. That's why Dak Prescott and a bunch of other players were in the room, and it's one of the first things that he talked about was the building relationships and all that kind of stuff. But you and I know, when did the offense take off last year? When was the offense good? It was after they got pummeled. They got pummeled by the 49ers. They changed the offense. They started running the ball more, but they also ran the offense more through CeeDee Lamb. And it started with Schottenheimer and Dak Prescott convincing Mike McCarthy that they needed to make some changes. But they didn't stick with that this year. It went back to the offense that Mike McCarthy wanted to run, and the culture was bad under McCarthy. I think that was obvious and they needed to fix it. But like specific to actual X and O football, Schottenheimer wants more play action. I think that's good. He wants more tempo. I think, that's good in spurts, but he also wants more condensed splits by the wide receiver. He talked about wanting, like the run plays and the pass plays
to look the same,
basically. And he's talked about,
very like McVay and Shanahan.
That's exactly right. More McVay, Shanahan. And that by nature is naturally going to make you a more physical football team because your wide receivers now are going to be part of the blocking as well. Yeah. So they're like, and it's not going to look drastically, Mike McCarthy apparently had his Cowboys teams this season were number 3 in terms of wide splits. Like they were split out wider than all but 2 teams in the NFL. And again, I think that that's going to make them, a naturally a more physical football team. It's going, so like you're not going to look quite as predictable. But, like Ross Tucker, I was listening to some Dallas. I've been listening to a lot of Dallas radio. He was on as a guest. Ross Tucker said, he played for 9 different NFL teams. He played for Joe Gibbs, he played for Marty Schottenheimer. He played for Bill Belichick. And Ross Tucker said that Marty Schottenheimer was the best coach that he ever played for. And a big part of that was the culture, like the being in the locker room, the community, like all those different things. And so, like, he was a leader of men. His teams were physical and they were tough. Marty Schottenheimer's were. And now, just because you're Brian Schottenheimer and you're the son of Marty Schottenheimer doesn't necessarily, it doesn't mean obviously he's going to do everything like that. But when it comes to those like culture things, like I think that that's a big part of who Brian Schottenheimer is. So, look, he's at the end of the day, he's got to go out and win football games. But at least for right now, I like a lot of the concepts, and they needed a culture overhaul. They're going to get a culture overhaul. So we'll see how far it goes next year. I don't think they're going to be soft. Yeah. He actually could win playoff games, Michael. He just couldn't get to the Super Bowl. Marty couldn't get to the Super Bowl. He won playoff games. It's not Marty Schottenheimer's fault that Kevin Mack fumbled in the AFC Championship game at the 3-yard line. Like, they were that close to going to the Super Bowl and beating the Denver Broncos. The bounces, didn't go their way. I'm fully aware of Marty Schottenheimer's shortcomings in the playoffs. But the Dallas Cowboys have had those shortcomings as well. I would at least in the short term settle for a better culture in the locker room and a more physical team on Sundays. And I think that at the very least, they're going to get that. So we'll see where it goes. I mean, they've got the core. Here's what's going to tell me. Like, Zach Martin has not fully committed to retiring. He has kind of flirted with, he had talked about maybe this is it for him. Now, I don't think that, like, the success or failure is ultimately going to fall on whether Zach Martin decides to retire or keep playing. But if Zach Martin decides to keep playing after this, I think that is a potential really good sign for the direction that Notre Dame or that Dallas could be heading with this change. Because again, I feel like from a personality standpoint, the personalities are different, but when you talk about culture, communication with players, all those different things, I think that there's a lot of similarities between Brian Schottenheimer and Marcus Freeman. So we'll see where it goes. I'm at least more encouraged, like hearing exactly what he stands for and what he wants to do than I probably was a week ago when this stuff, when the reports of Schottenheimer started coming out. I think you kind of fall in the same category, right?
Yes.
All right. That's going to do it for today. Man, we were here for a while. Appreciate you being here. I'm going to be gone the next couple of days. I don't know what Vince has planned for tomorrow. I think Jesse and Vince are going to be here Thursday, and I'll be back Friday. We're going to Virginia Tech with Notre Dame women's basketball for a game Thursday night. So that'll be what I've got going on Thursday. Hit the like button before you leave. Appreciate you as always. Jess, great being back with you as always. We'll talk to you later. IB Nation Sports Talk.